Friends, Assalamu alaikum, and peace be upon you. And this program is a weekly program on Sundays, and it is about Muslims together. How can we shape the world? How can we shape to a better world? And we will have contributions from different scholars. And today we are going to talk about uh, Taliban, Sharia, and Afghanistan. What is going on out there? There are legitimate concerns about what Taliban would do based on their history. However, I want to add that Taliban did make an announcement. I don't know if we can trust that opinion. When Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he took over Mecca from the Quraysh tribe. He made very clear that everybody is forgiven and nobody will be punished, nobody will be persecuted, and everybody is free to practice their faith and tradition. And Taliban made a very similar statement, but they forget or fail to mention that it was following the Prophet Muhammad. Now the question is, would they live up to what they said? That is the question we have. And we have Annie Zonneveld. She is the president of Muslims for Progressive Values, and it is an organization that reflects the values of a majority of Muslims who generally don't speak up. So is Soraya Deen. She is with Muslim Women Speakers Organization, and Daisy Khan will join us in a few, about 12:30, and we may have Safi Kaskas also join, and of course I'm here. So Annie, please share your thoughts on what's going on with Taliban, Afghanistan, and women, particularly the concerns we have about women.
Hello, salam everyone, peace, greetings. I'm Annie Zonneveld, founder and president of Muslims for Progressive Values. Today is our 14th year anniversary of the organization.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And the work that we've been doing is basically challenging the status quo, challenging the traditional and conservative and radical interpretations of Islam. So the work that we're doing in advocating for human rights, for women's rights, for freedom of religion, that means your right to express your religion or even to convert or to become an atheist, is really rooted in Islam, in the Quran verse, Surah 2:256. That is sort of like a fundamental of the beauty of Islam, the right to choose to believe or not. And there is no earthly punishment in how you choose your belief system. And so at that crux is the liberty of one's individual right to use your mental capacity, which is also mentioned many times in the Quran about your right to do so and how to express yourself. So I'm going to the women's rights is obviously a huge issue, but one thing that people need to understand that a lot of the positive outcome of the 20 years of the American and NATO presence and the influx of international organizations and nonprofits in Afghanistan is how girls have shifted from being allowed to go to just religious madrasas up to 9 or up to puberty to now actually being able to go to school and learn math and English, etc. And the secular or the general subjects that the rest of the world does. And so that is in itself a culture shift that happened within the 20 years. To expect a whole nation to be educated for more, and unfortunately, only 37% of girls are actually educated. But the good thing is a majority of the university students are actually women now. And so you have, and it's really unfortunate the way we've pulled out, the way our government, the US government, has actually negotiated with the Taliban last year, the terrorist organization, at the exclusion of the government, government has been really the result that we are seeing today. What we tried to do with other women's rights organizations, so I was invited in meeting to actually, as a women-led organization, to work with other international women-led organization, Muslim, to to advocate for Afghani women organizations to be at the table while Trump was negotiating with the Taliban. Unfortunately, we were not successful. You know, of course, we had the misogynistic president that we had, so who cares about women and girls' rights? So this is the outcome that we have. For me, as a songwriter, musician with the arts close to my heart, this this religious freedom, this right to express yourself, and the way Muslim societies have expressed themselves through centuries, through arts, poetry, dance, etc., all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but again, Zabiullah Mujahid, the spokesperson for the Taliban, in his interview with New York Times, declared that music is again going to be forbidden, right? So this Taliban 2.0 or this reformed Taliban is really questionable. If you can't have the right to express yourself and you are conformed to this interpretation of Sharia law, the question is, well, what kind of Sharia law? But this interpretation is a perfect example, not just in the not with just the Taliban, but in Saudi Arabia, in Iran, in so many Muslim societies, including here in the United States. When a Muslim women's voice is censored, like say by Sound Vision, prominent Muslim organizations, because we are female and our voice is sexual, that is the problem with the interpretation of Islam today. And so whether it be the Taliban, whether it be Muslim organizations here in the West, in many ways they're the same. The only difference is the level of punishment. So if you were going to cut and paste the theology between Taliban, Saudi Arabia, and many of the Muslim majority countries and some of the Muslim organizations in the United States, the foundation from which they interpret the theology and the interpretation of Islam is very much the same, except the degree of punishment. That is it. And so what we need to do is to undermine the way the theology, the way the Quran is being interpreted in itself, for us to really, truly have a liberated, loving and compassionate Islam, to be able to use the God-given capacity that we were given to be able to express ourselves freely, whether you're a woman or not. So I will just stop there for now.
Thanks, Annie. Friends, we're talking about Taliban, Afghanistan, and Muslim women. And please remember, we are going to present different points of view. We have to learn to respect and accept different points of view as well, even though we may disagree with what the Taliban have done. Now, Soraya Deen, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mike, and thank you to the panelists. Soraya Deen, I'm from Los Angeles, but today in New Jersey, I'm here to admit my daughter at NYU. So a little running between errands and stuff. But I just want us to remember very clearly, you know, James Baldwin once said, not everything that is being faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. So it is a time for Muslims to really face the reality of the challenges that we are facing on the ground. Because what we see with the Taliban is a harsh interpretation, a narrow interpretation of our religious laws. The texts of the classical Islamic laws do not fully capture the brutal reality of the daily life of a woman under regimes that apply Sharia. It is authoritarian and it is intolerant. I work in Nigeria, I work in Bangladesh, I work in Sri Lanka. I'm an international activist. And this is not negotiable for me. The religious brand of oppression, dominance, and violence against Muslim women is appalling. And it's time for all of us in one voice, identify and designate the Taliban as some who are not preaching the correct Islam. And it's time for us to do it, because when Saudi Arabia was out with these repressive laws, not that but I think what we need to do more is not simply disassociate, but to rise above their rhetoric and offer an alternative. And this conversation, I think should be about that. Because if you go back to what the Prophet said in his last sermon, what he said was very critical. He said 4 things that I really want to, I'm not going to emphasize all 4 because of want of time, but what he said that was profound is, your women also have certain rights over you. Do treat your women well and be kind to them, for they are your partners and they are committed helpers. And this is something we have to really make the Taliban and the entire world, because today Islam and Muslims, we are on trial once again.
Yeah.
It's not enough for us to say this is not Islam, but we have to offer something more than that. And we know the brand of Sharia that the Taliban introduced in 1996 is not just going to vanish with a magic wand and an intention. There's so much to be done between intention and action. And I'm not sure the Taliban is capable of doing that action. So today, the 20 years we spent in Afghanistan has created a new generation of Afghanis. It is their country, it is their future. It is for them to really take their country to the next level the way they want it. Because let us be very clear, no one can help Afghanistan and the women to emancipate them until and unless women are freed of all forms of religion-based oppression. And in my work as the founder of the Muslim Women Speakers Movement, trying to empower women, just to tell them, listen, you are also the recipient of God's message. You're not the benefactor, as men would like to tell. This is what God says, therefore listen to me. No, question everything. So what we are doing now is we are inviting academics and we're inviting professionals to the conversation, no longer just religious actors. So in Sri Lanka alone, we have created several Muslim roundtables. And today, and I'm very proud to say this and very relieved to say this, there are some conservative imams who write to me from Sri Lanka and ask me, what shall we do now? So my friends, this is my message, is that until a collective consciousness is created, we have to do what we are doing. And Ani, we know you have spearheaded this work, Ani. So continuing to do what you have done, you have given us all a baton, because I came much later to this work, because my son was told he was a terrorist, he was a Muslim. And I realized I had work to do. And the more I worked in the interfaith non-Muslim circles, I was celebrated. But in my Muslim community, I was not. And that bothered me. And for me, this is not negotiable. And I go back to my community and say, see, not enough women are seated at the table. So how can we bring the women? How can we engage them? And how can we ask them, is this working for you? Is critical. So
Soraya, the most important thing you said was, I mean, of all the things, is acknowledgement that there is extremism in Islam and we have to fix it. And that is the most important thing. Please continue.
Yes. And then to conclude, the organization of Islamic Conference, they made a statement, not one word about a woman, how this should impact the woman. We have had this conversation for years. We can't do that. So therefore, I ask even all the males on this panel, support us women, invite us to these forums. Let us talk about how this issue is impacting us. Because I look at my daughter, she says, Mom, I don't want to go to a mosque. It's sad because of the way she's treated, She has to use the side entrance. She has to see that every strand of her hair is covered. And this is in Los Angeles, This is, can you just imagine what must be happening in that part of those parts of the world? That's why I concentrate a lot. For me, Sri Lanka, the country I was born in, is like a model. It's a model United Nations for me, to create this conversation, to do some meaningful, powerful work, because the women, they need to hear us. They need to hear us. Thank you.
Yes. Friends, continuing on, at 2 o'clock, we will have a program on justice, one of the 8th value of Islam, how justice contributes to creating better societies. And Dr. Safi Kaskas will join us. Dr. Safi Kaskas, if you are here, Daisy Khan will join us at about 1:30. And if you are here, you want to share for about 10 minutes, your perspective, and we have to respect all different perspectives. Dr. Kaskas? If not, I will ask some questions. Soraya, you mentioned, I think both of you mentioned about designating Taliban as a terrorist organization, which I think most Muslims around the world recognize them as an extremist terrorist organization. But how do we engage with them? I know we can tell them you are terrorists and they will remain terrorists because they say we love to wear this badge of terrorism, we will remain terrorists. But how do we engage with them and bring them back into the common fold, moderation fold that Islam is? Both of you.
You know, Mike, I think we do some phenomenal work. I'm the women's outreach coordinator for Omnia as well. What we do is we need to deconstruct the received theology. And we have to talk with the Taliban, certainly. Otherwise, these issues that we talk about will not yield results until we engage them. So there is a process in which we have to engage them into asking them what are their values, do they even have a value, you know, and really open up their thinking. And yes. I don't think you and I from here can do it. This is what I said, the Afghani youth, they have to begin this process, and it's going to be hard. It's not just simple that we can suggest things from here. It has to. Now, when we were working in Nigeria, Nigerians are waiting for us Americans to bring a solution. And we said, no, the solution is in your soil. It is a ground up solution, you know. Try to build your communities to come together, to stand united. And yesterday I was in conversation with a doctor who's from Afghanistan. And what he said was also very alarming and amazing. He said was that the Afghani people don't want the Americans to tell them what to do. They're tired of it.
Nobody wants.
Yeah, and sooner we recognize that. And he said, if only America has built more schools. Of course, we have built schools, but more schools. Instead of empowering an armed resistance and a military solution, we could have done more. Certainly, we could have done more. There's always room. Hindsight is 2020. And I am convinced that we have to reach out to many, as the government makes policy decisions and makes truces and agreements with the Taliban, for us, people like us to enter Afghanistan and talk to the women and the men, you know, there's a powerful way to begin that process.
Yes.
Ani, I would like to hear what you propose.
Well, yeah, obviously that is for us sitting in the West, we should stay out of it. The thing about what has disappointed me is tremendously is the Union of Muftis, of the Global Union of Muftis, congratulated the Taliban. The Chief Mufti of Oman, of Morocco, of Libya also congratulated the Taliban. So for me, when you look at the dominance of this religious institutions that are very orthodox or patriarchy, intensely patriarchy, I see no hope for, at least in the Sunni construct anyway, for there really to be a shift in this mindset. That said, one thing that Americans and the United Nations did is that when they were constructing the constitution of the Afghan government, they actually included Sharia law experts. And so that is how they were able to actually legislate and put in place the rights of women in the Afghani constitution, because it was also justified in the name of Islam according to Sharia law, whatever that Sharia law is. And Sharia law is obviously, it depends on what country and what culture you're talking about, right? So Sharia law is not this one template. So, so that is how they've been able to justify women's rights and religious freedom and freedom of expression within the Afghani constitution. And I actually know the lawyer, the human rights expert, woman that worked with the government in constructing this constitution. So this has been the work that was done in the first, let's say, 7 to 10 years of the American occupation. Now, moving forward, I'll give a perfect example. So I've been working in Burundi for more than 5 years, and the shift that I've seen towards a more egalitarian interpretation of Islam is palpable. And that is because it's not just the religious leaders that are influencing the population in general about women and girls' rights, but it's the men themselves who are now woken to a different interpretation of Islam. And so when I spoke to our partner,
shall we say correct interpretation of Islam?
yeah, no, exactly. It is the correct interpretation of Islam. And so therefore, and last week I was speaking to our chief imam coordinator there, and he said, now there is a new movement against the radical imams of Burundi. So now the population is rising up and organizing to eliminate, to disempower the radical imams who has been preaching domestic violence as a right of the husband, etc. Right? So this is the 5 years of work that we've done in order to empower and to educate the alternative or the true teaching of Islam to the general public. This can be done in Afghanistan. We've been doing it in Pakistan through social media as well. And our partners in Pakistan are so worried because there is already a Pakistan Taliban. So even though there is a lot to be said of the influence of religious leaders, there's a lot to be said of the power of the people themselves. But it takes a lot of risk for them to really stick their neck out. And I think there needs to be, it's a partnership between religious authority and institutions and also the general public. And together through media, through social media is the only way to really empower the population to actually shift in the direction of human rights. The way the Taliban is tyrannical and oppressive in its nature is the fear factor. But there are a lot of women that are fearless and a lot of men who are fearless. And God bless their souls and God bless their spirit for that strength, for standing up to this sort of, this tyrannical oppression that they're facing. And I think that this next generation, whether it be in Afghanistan, Pakistan, or wherever they are, this next generation is going to be the generation that's going to redefine how Islam is being practiced. I really have a lot of hope in Soraya's daughter and so many of the younger generation, the younger people that I work with globally. They are so much wiser, so much fairer, so much justice in their hearts in the name of Islam than the old, I apologize, Safi, you're an exception, but to the older generation patriarchs, right? So, I'll stop there for now.
And Mike, here's where your work is so important to this movement. You talk about pluralism, we talk about it, but we don't embody it enough.
We did a program on Safi, and I did it's coming up on pluralism in Islam, but we're also starting a course on pluralism 101, pluralism 201. We are trying to figure out what is the best date and time to do it. And that is, people need to learn about it. And that we will bring in people from atheists to Zoroastrian, everyone in between, what is their idea of pluralism. We'll bring that out there. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
But this idea of pluralism and inclusivity and human rights, it cannot start it has to start young. And this is the reason I think, like, having a children's curriculum that is imparting with the Islamic human rights language, which we've been doing for 14 years, which creating that curriculum, which I've just completed with an early childhood expert. I think this is what's needed in Muslim societies. An Islam that is inclusive and rooted in human rights. And Daisy's done incredible work in Afghanistan with the imams there as well. So I'm really glad to see her joining us.
And she will be sharing a few very critical thoughts. By the way, I don't mean to brag about my country, India. Indian Muslims have never resorted to violence. They have enduring the lynching, mob lynching and all that, but they have never resorted to violence. I'm very proud of Indian Muslims. because that is the kind of teaching we have there in India. India could be a beacon of hope, a beacon of model for Islam around the world. And in fact, much of the literature in Islam is produced in India. So Daisy Khan is here, and she is the author of this book, Wise Up, really Wise Up. And in that book, there is a chapter from Annie, there is a chapter from me, and Soraya has written a chapter. It is a book everybody should own about how to deal with extremism in Islam. Daisy, please go ahead. The floor is yours. Are you ready?
If she's not, I know Safi held his hand up.
Okay. Safi, please
You're
go ahead.
muted, Safi. Can't hear you.
Safi, you have to unmute yourself if you're speaking. Let's continue. Let me share a little story while Daisy gets ready. About 10 years ago, the State Department shared this with me, this story. A Yemeni judge who was presiding over the terrorists, the Al-Qaeda terrorists at that time in jails, he walks up to them and I said, look, you have an opportunity here. And this is shared by the State Department with me. He said, I have an opportunity for you. I'm going to present a copy of the Quran to you. Read through it. If you find anywhere, any verse about killing anybody else, anybody, any human being, even killing one human being, including suicide, I will release you. If you find that killing is allowed in Islam and the Quran, I will join you. So he gives them 30 days time. 30 days later, he walks up to the jail cell, gathers up those terrorists that were in the jail and said, what did you find? And those guys were screaming. I said, we've been duped by Osama bin Laden that this is in the Quran, kill the infidels and all that. It is not in the Quran. Now, our President Biden has said, what do you want to do with the Taliban? He said he wants everybody get killed. Biden is so dead wrong on that. We need to capture them, go through the education. If you kill them, there will be another one and another one. We need to go through the education process with them, give them the same chance, same opportunity, and you will find in the long run, you will have right people propagating religion. So Daisy, if you're ready, and Safi, you raised your hand, please go ahead, whoever wants to take.
I'll let Safi go in because I will then present something.
Okay, Safi, you got about 5 to 6 minutes. Looks like he's not ready.
He said to unmute him from your end, Mike.
Well, wait a minute. How do I unmute him? Let me see.
To
Participants.
read the chat. Mm.
How do I do that? Just one second. Give me a second. Safi, you're unmuted.
Yeah, you're unmuted. Yeah. Safi, try logging off and then logging back in, Safi.
And Mike, are you able to give me screen share?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's his Daisy.
Good to see you, Daisy.
Very nice to see you, Annie. And Soraya, nice to see you.
Yes, as well. Always following your work.
I know.
Daisy, today is 14 years of MPV anniversary.
Oh, congratulations. Great news.
Yeah.
And give me a second, Daisy. Trying to figure out how to do it.
Have to go on the right side, the 3 buttons, and then I think it says, let somebody else be a host.
Why is it not giving me the chance?
I think you'll have to make a co-host and then she can start screen sharing.
Yes, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it, what's going on here? What happened this before?
Why don't you go to participants, find my name, and then in more, it might say, allow that person to be a host.
Participants, okay, there it is.
And see
More. Make co-host.
There you go. That's it.
Meeting, yes. Okay, Daisy. Screen share. Okay.
Okay. So okay, so I'm admitted. Oh, now I'm admitting stuff. Now I become a host.
I admitted him.
Now
Okay.
I'm taking over. You can relax. Okay, so I am sharing my screen. Okay. Can you see that? Are you able to see that?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna share again.
Yeah. Well, you are on the screen now. Let's try to share.
Okay.
Yes. Not
Okay, it's
expired.
coming. Okay. All right.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thank you, Mike, for this urgent meeting. As you can see, the situation in Afghanistan, I have been working in Afghanistan since 2009 with my women partners there. And I have, for the last 3 years, we have been very alarmed with what's going on with the rise of Taliban, because the writing was on the wall, they were not disarmed. And there was a potential of them being a real force. So what we did not expect is this speed at which they have taken over the country. And for the last 1 year, my partner and I, Jamila Afghani, and I have been working very closely together to prove to Taliban or whoever might be in governance as the US withdraws on what the rights of Muslim women truly are and how can they be proved to the ordinary person and to anybody in government through the Islamic legal framework. So I don't have to give a lecture to all of you because many of you already know what this is. So I just want to take a few minutes to show you how we are presenting this information and what could be the potential of this information, partly because I am, part of me is self-learned. I have learned a lot on this job, as you are, Ani and Soraya, all of us have learned.
Me too.
Because we have to teach it to others. So I'm publishing a book called 30 Rights of Muslim Women, where I'm culling the rights of Muslim women that we always have to, that are part of the conversation, that are part of the debate here in the US, but also there are real grievances that women are facing around the world. And we know that, so we can't ignore the part where women are denied these rights. So Jamila and I put together what we thought was the top questions. And then we also went to the periphery, and over the years that I've done women's rights work, I made sure that every issue that was raised by women is actually, in fact, in this book. But the book is in progress. It's not done yet. And because there's just, books are books. They have their own life. It takes time and it has to be done right. So, but in the meantime, knowing that Taliban was coming back about 6-7 months ago, which is when we all began the evacuation part of women. So this is why there's been abject failure from our government to not heed the call. 7 months ago, we had made lists of women that needed to leave the country and presented that, and nothing happened. This is why we're in a crisis mode. So we began to speed up the Universal Declaration of Muslim Women's Rights. So I call it the Universal Declaration because I want it to be taken seriously. It's not just women's rights. It's something that can be presented to governments. And Ani, I know you do a lot of work with UN. This is like our way of saying, this is our CEDAW. This is our CEDAW. And we can prove to you that this is very similar to CEDAW. In fact, it even surpasses CEDAW in terms of the rights that we have. So I think it's time for us Muslims to take a leadership role in this globally, to prove to the world that this is happening. So there are two major things happening at the same time that are actually in our favor. Number one, Saudi has shifted gears. And as we all know, it's not perfect, but they have actually abandoned what they believed previously, and they are embracing women's rights. So that the resistance is not going to come from that camp anymore. And at the same time, there's an urgent conversation about Afghan women and Taliban and their treatment of women. So we have these two opportunities where we who care about these issues and who know that these rights are embedded in Islam can jump in now with full force, with all of us coming together, men, women, activists, learned scholars, whoever we are, and by the way, Muslim, non-Muslim, can basically push for these rights to be recognized globally, not only by governments, but put it on the table with Taliban. So the way we did this was we made this declaration, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't get any resistance from the scholars. So I did it in accordance with the objectives of Sharia, which some of you know very well. And I made sure that these rights actually rested under each of those, because we wanted to make sure that our methodology was proven, recognizable by Muslims, scholars who might push back, and do it in that way. So here it looks like this. So I won't take you through the building on historic precedents, because we wanted to show the women that lived around the time of Prophet, who they truly were and what was their contribution, so we can draw inspiration from that. So there are some women named in here, you know their names: Hafsa, Hagar, Khadija, Sayyidah Nafisa, Nana Asma. So some women who came later on. And so the contribution that they have made to Islamic civilization, our history, our religion, that often gets overshadowed. But then we also said that there is so much progress that needs to be made, because there are real grievances that women have everywhere in the world. And so then we kind of flipped down very quickly to where we are drawing our intellectual heritage from, and that is from the scholarship. And one of the principles of Islamic law is maslaha, which is welfare of the public interest. And we put that in there because we really wanted to appeal to Taliban, because right now they are saying that women can go to school. They are saying that women can be in politics. They are saying women need to come back to work. Why? Because it's in their interest, not because they really believe in it. It's in the interest of their nation building, because they need these women now. So maslaha, this is why we focused on, this is another way of saying women's role is urgent and key. So then we just mentioned the 6 maqasid here. And then we went through each maqasid. So this is the first objective: protection and promotion of religion.
Maqasid is purpose.
It's objective, it's purpose, and so then we put exercise vice regency, because that is the fundamental of everything. That's where we get our equality from, because we are endowed by the creator to do what we have been, to fulfill our destiny. We have been sent here, as men have, as all humans have, to achieve a purpose. And then we also mentioned exercising religious leadership. So what we did was we took from the book that I'm writing, I took some of the key verses that relate to that subject, because if somebody said, well, where is it coming from? It's just a secular document. Oh, it's just your opinion. Well, it's not my opinion. It's coming from somewhere. There's a source. So exercising religious leadership, upholding justice through interpretation of Islamic texts. This means that a woman can be a judge. She can be a scholar. She can be a mufti. Grant access to religious spaces, because this has to do with, a lot of women not having access to religious spaces, whether that is institutions or whatever. So we only have like 4 rights here. Protection and promotion of life is physical and material security, like, people getting threatened and being killed. Social mobility is very big in Afghanistan, because they were told that they couldn't venture out without a guardian. Protection from domestic and all forms of abuse, of violence. And so this is basically anything to do with violence. So whether it is, domestic violence, protection from female genital mutilation, because there's an issue that is still plaguing certain parts of, I'm admitting Safi again, because he's safeguard against rape and sexual assault. As you know, this is a very big case all over the world. Safeguard against child trafficking. Why we put child trafficking in here? Because this really affects, children who are trafficked are sexually abused, sold into sexual slavery, their bodies are being used. So also it's a very big issue in Afghanistan. So we made sure that because people are literally, children are being sold into slavery right now. Access to hygiene and health is a very big issue in Afghanistan, because women aren't getting the right kind of access to hygiene or health. And so, to reduce this mortality rates and their childbearing potential. Expression of modesty, we put it under here, because this has to do with body. It has to do with, how you express yourself, through your dress and your mode. But we also made sure that in this modesty, we said that you can express your modesty the way you want a modesty, but you cannot have no social or legislative coercion, because this is important. For instance, right now, they're saying to women, you can come to work, but provided you wear this, right? So there's already like, there has to be, a dress code that you have to follow. So, okay, you can say that, but the question is that really, as we believe in Islam, there is no coercion religion. So women should be able to express that. So we put that in there. Then promotion of intellect, accessing religious and secular education. This is very big. This is both. You should have access to both. Exercising civic and political leadership, because it's about you pursuing a career that you feel that you can contribute. And also because in Afghanistan, a lot of women are parliamentarians and they're in politics and they're gunned down and they're killed for that. And they're told that they can't be leaders. Pursuing a career is general. Anybody should be able to pursue a career if they choose a career. Exercising freedom of speech is very big in Afghanistan and in certain parts of the Muslim world. And this was my favorite subject. I could not believe how much emphasis there was on freedom of speech in Islam. I mean, I just read these volumes of books, especially from Kamali and others. Outstanding. It's amazing how much freedom of speech we have and freedom of expression we have. That it's shocking to me that we are told that we should be silent.
Yeah.
Provide testimony.
Yes, including here in the West. Oh my God, yes.
Shocking. The women in front of the Prophet used to debate with him and talk and ask questions. And then when they had a complaint, they would go to the Prophet, why is God not doing this? And every time a verse came down in response to a woman complaining. So if a woman could complain to the Prophet and then God sends a revelation in response to that, then why is it that women are told to be silent? Provide testimony and witness. As you know, this is a very big issue with women being half witnesses. So we explain that in full detail. Marriage rights. This has to do with choosing your marriage partner and not being forced, but then we had to have 3 types of marriages listed here because this happens in Afghanistan. So one is basic marriage rights, and the second one is preventing forced marriage, and the third one is preventing child marriage. And each one of them have their own arguments and have their own respective issues of why they happen. Then choice regarding entrance into or accepting polygamy. We had to be very careful with this article, but at the same time, we were very strong in explaining what was the purpose of this. What was the verse actually saying versus how is it being utilized and monopolized, and how women are actually being forced into these types of marriages and how we have to reject that. Divorce rights, that, family planning and abortion. This was also, it's not necessarily a big issue in Afghanistan. This issue doesn't rise there so much, but it is a very big issue for people in the West and other countries. Adoption and care of orphans. This is my personal pet project because I cannot believe how many orphans we have all over the world. And Muslims don't take these orphans in, even though there is so much emphasis in the Quran on care of orphans, because we keep saying, well, adoption is not permitted. Well, that's just not true. Read my article and you will be inspired to go. And especially now with so many minors being sent to America, we should just adopt them fully. But of course, adoption has its rules, and those are the rules you have to follow. Motherhood versus womanhood was to signify the role that a mother has, but also how that should not be denied to realize her womanhood. In other words, so we showed a lot of examples of early women who were mothers and then were full, expressed their full womanhood. In other words, they were engaged in society, they were civically engaged, they were politically engaged, and yet they were mothers. So they didn't have to make a choice between the two. So this overemphasis that the only role that a woman has is to be a mother needs to be revisited. And that's what our article does.
That is a beautiful article. It is in the religionnews.com. Well-written article also. That everybody should read that article. And friends, you can download this declaration from the website wisemuslimwomen.org. And also the book she's talking about, Daisy, about 30 rights of Muslim women to teach Taliban and those who don't believe in that. Please donate. There is a donate button there on the screen. Donate as much as you can to get the book out. It costs a lot of money to put a good book out, a good book like this, Wise Women. And thank you, Daisy, for doing all that work. And we got about, let's see, we got about 13 minutes. We can take a few Q&A.
Let me go through quickly and finish this.
Go ahead, please.
I didn't finish this and I want to give it to people so that they know what it is. So the 26th article is on financial independence and equal pay, because the Quran says this concept of equal pay, inheritance rights, property ownership, because this is a very big issue in Afghanistan, protection from slander, another big issue there. People are just slandered, and safeguarding against honor killings. So then this is our commitment, who we are calling upon.
Just 1 second. Somebody's, please mute. So there is noise coming from the background. Please mute.
That was my phone. It was far away. So it's
sorry.
So the plan for this is actually being put on email, is being put online. So everybody will have an opportunity to sign it. I'd like to get 1 million signatures around the world. It's my dream. And I'd like to get every Muslim man to sign it, every Muslim woman to sign it, every youth to sign it.
I'll be the first one.
I mean, as many as we can, because if we get 1 million signatures, we can say that 1 million people believe this. And, you know, that numbers count, as you know. And then each organization that I know that is a NGO will sign it as if it's their own document, their own declaration. They'll put their name underneath it. So they will be able to say, this is coming from me because I also believe this. And that way we can get many more people to sign it. It is open to non-Muslims as well. So the way we've created this is we have a button for a Muslim man, Muslim woman, Muslim scholar, Muslim activist, and then we have a section for non-Muslim women. So we know who signed it and how many people care about this issue. So this is something that we will be getting out in the next week or so. And then I will be reaching out to individual women's organizations and women scholars to see if they can sign.
And men's organization too.
Men's organization, of course. This is what's happening.
Question to you,
Yeah.
Daisy, please. So I'm really glad that this is coming out really soon, because the work that we're doing in Africa, you know, we have the initiative Imams for She, which is a hashtag, and it's all these feminist religious leaders that we work with that support and have been preaching everything that you've laid down here in this document. So I'm really excited about this. The work that we're doing in Kenya is in reforming the Kadi court there. And one of the challenges that we were having is actually advocating and getting the buy-in from the general public for women Qadis, so women judges. Mm-hmm. So what you highlighted here is so perfect. So, as a founder of the umbrella organization, Alliance of Inclusive Muslim, which is a global Muslim network of like-minded Muslims, I am sure we will have no problem signing on.
Great.
So I look forward to working with you and helping get this out in the field.
Yeah.
Good job. And I know Daisy's work, the book that she put out on anti-radicalism, that was a phenomenally beautiful book, and I'm sure this one is going to be as well.
Well,
and I have donated.
Thank you. I know you are a donor. Thank you. Ani, if you need an article ahead of time, I can send you the Word document for any particular article you need, because this is not sufficient. This is just like a synthesized version, but there is a 3-page article on why. So that is how we want to work with our partners. Our partners are going to basically take the information, they'll have full access to it, and they can just run with it and do their own trainings, because I can't do all this. The partners are going to do all the work. I'm just delivering this information. Thank you so much for having me.
Annie, thanks for taking the time. I know you got a lot of appointments going. Appreciate that. Annie, Daisy, we got one question for you, last question before you go. How do we initiate a dialogue with the Taliban? What does it take?
Well, you know, it turns out that Jamila Afghani was approached a while ago from a segment of Taliban. So there are many Talibans. There's at least minimum 4 Talibans. So the one that is trying to govern is the one that is probably the most educated and the most moderate or moderating as they're going along, because they have to govern. I think that we need to put a little pressure on our government and other governments whose ear they have to put this in front of them, because they need something to base this on, right? They're basing it on their own thinking and their own. And I know there's nothing out there that looks like this, that has been created like this, with this in mind. There are books out there, but who's going to go through all those books? I mean, I read all the books that I can think of. The thing is, you need to present something to them. So we already have it in Dari, we already have it in Pashto. It's ready to be delivered to them. We just need a channel that says this has to be delivered now. And these guys can make some big decisions right now, because once they get entrenched, they're not going to be because everybody's watching them, right? So there's a short period of time within which they're going to get the aid, or they're not going to get the aid. So Western or international community is all telling them you have to give women the rights, but they're couching it in secular terms, and they keep saying we want the Islamic framework. So all I'm saying is, let's get the Islamic framework in front of them and tell them it's been signed by 1 million people around the world. And Muslim scholars, your own scholars, have said this. So somebody like a Safi who's translated the Quran, his name has to be prominently at the top, right? Women's organizations and women scholars' names have to be at the top. So then, yeah, exactly. So, it's about legitimating this process and showing that many people have signed it, and then get it out there. Because Ani, I tell you, it's not just in Afghanistan. This can be very useful all over the world, right?
Agree.
For sure.
I want to quickly add, that is a useful document, Daisy. Thank you for putting it together. I can see it being used all over the world. But here's what I want to assert. As the governments negotiate and come together, we have to mobilize the people on the ground. This is very critical, because what the social media has done for us today is phenomenal. It hears the voices of the unheard, the oppressed, the suppressed, the marginalized. So when women come in crowds, not only women, men, and when they make a stand, the Taliban is watchful, We can't just wait only for governments. We must mobilize the people. And as a grassroots activist, this is exactly what I do. I do a monthly Zoom call, 1 hour. Just talk to women and tell them they have the power to change the course in history. You can't wait for somebody else to do it. This is your work. Take a stand, do something. Don't be a potted plant anymore. Do something. You don't have to come to the road. You can write a letter. You can bring a community together. You can sing a song. You can do something,
All right. We got about 3 minutes. Each one of you 1 minute, please, because we got the next program at 2:00.
Okay, so when it comes to policy, you're talking about money, you're talking about development funds. This is where you can leverage, and Daisy, I'd be happy to talk to you about that when it comes to leveraging policy, money with human rights and women's rights, and using this document as a way to leverage this language between Islamic right and secular terms, right? So we call it Islamic human rights. So last question to you, Daisy, how is Jamila Afghani doing?
So Jamila tried to leave the country because she was threatened by one element of Taliban, which is the dangerous element, and they wanted her out. And so she has fled with 12 family members. She tried to make 5 attempts to go, and I was literally on WhatsApp like all the time because I was her lifeline, trying to connect her with this one and that one. So she's finally in Norway now. The Norwegians actually evacuated her. The ambassador himself evacuated her. So she is safe. But our plan is to do all these trainings with Afghan women that Soraya just mentioned online. And the other plan is, when the book comes out, is to make an app for the Afghan women that they have on their phones. So they should have these rights on their phones because they can't download the book. They can't read the book's still in English. So, our work has to happen literally at the grassroots level, and women who are stuck there have the most to benefit.
Yes.
Yes.
You have to give them hope and possibility for them.
Yes. You also have to create a social, you have it down to a minimalist, but it has to be even more minimalist in this presentation in order for that to really work.
Well, with that, we conclude the program. Daisy, one word from you and we'll conclude the program.
Well, I think that this is a there are some historic moments, right? There are some moments that are life-altering, shifting, and there's a major shift happening in the world right now. And I also believe that this could be that moment where the soul of Islam itself takes a little breath, because it'll be led by Afghan women. I think the struggle of Afghan women is all of our struggles now. If we can reassert the right kind of Islam there now, because we have this moment and opportunity, I think that we also reduce some of the Islamophobia that we're going to get hit with if we keep seeing women's noses getting cut off and, you know, women being beheaded and stuff like that. So it is in our interest to do this, not only for Afghan women, but also in our own self-interest here, because the more we talk about the rights of Muslim women now, couched in Sharia, and we can show that this is actually coming from our scriptures, the more we can change that narrative that has been going on for the last 20 years.
Perfect. Only women can change the world. Bibi Khadija was the reason Islam spread, because of her support to Prophet Muhammad, and Bibi Fatima and Asiya, Moses' mother. All these women have been critical in changing the narration about what a good society ought to be. Thank you very much, Annie. Thank you very much, Soraya. Thank you very much, Daisy. And this program will be posted at youtube.com, Center for Pluralism, as well as World Muslims Together. So thank you very much. And we are going to go to the next program with Safi Kaskas about justice, how justice is one of these 7 values of Islam, 7 out of the 17, how justice can change the world, how justice, if followed correctly, we have a world where a cohesive societies exist. Thank you very much, everyone. You're welcome to stay, or it's up to you if you got appointments to go.